Hello guys, and unfortunately due to an error, I'm unable to post my video containing my slideshow, so I will be submitting it to my professor along with an explanation as to why I was unable to do them both together, because I'm trying to use OBS Streamlab to combine the two together, but it seems to be refusing to do so. So I did my report on the Knights Templar, and in the beginning they were founded by the French knight Hugh de Payens, and I'm a terrible at names when it comes to the French, so I do apologize. And with the blessings of King Baldwin II and Warmund, Patriarch of Jerusalem, they founded it in the year of 1118 AD after a call for a military offensive by the church in 1096 AD. Duty to protect the pilgrims from bandits and highwaymen as they traveled across the Holy Lands, visiting many religious sites, this new order took the name the Poor Knights of Christ. Bernard de... There we go. Sorry, guys. Bernard de Clairvaux and Hugh de Payens together wrote a code of conduct that each knight was to adhere to that was later known as the Latin Rule. Each knight wore a white surcoat with a red cross, though English knights were trained to use long swords, wooden lances with an iron tip, metal-headed maces, and battle axes. The long sword was the most common, as in times of prayer and meditation it served as a makeshift cross. And they were dubbed the Poor Knights of Christ. They had little to no financial resources, being as they were a monastic order. They relied on volunteers and donations to survive. Starting with just 9 knights and 3 horses, they quickly adopted a picture of 2 knights riding one horse as their emblem and symbol of their devotion to their beliefs and cause. The Latin rule stipulated that the knights were to follow the monastic rule of prayer at certain times of day and were for the allotted amount of time. They were also shown to be very effective farmers, making judgment calls that allowed them to work their land for the long haul versus focusing only on present crops. With their livestock and the byproducts of such livestock, such as milk, hide, and meat, the fruits and veggies they would get from the field, they were able to produce cheese, cider, butter, and wine, all staples of that time period. As their monastic order grew through volunteers, they garnered quite the reputation for themselves both on the battlefield and off. It was their reputation and contacts that they formed that they were able to amass a small fortune in no time. Alfonso I, King of Aragon, I'm sorry, left them a third of his kingdom in his will, and many kings and queens also gifted them large landed estates, along with the serfs to farm and tend to those lands. The Knights Templar had land producing agricultural revenue stretching from Ireland all the way to the Cyprus. Not to mention the fact that whenever someone wanted to go on a pilgrimage, you could pay the Knights Templar for protection or deposit your money with them, and they would write you their versions of a cashier's check, making it so that you could redeem it when you arrived at your destination, making you less of a target for bandits. As the Order grew rapidly, both in manpower and resources, they soon became the first troop to enter combat, often using their mounted knights to charge ahead of the main troops and break the enemy ranks. One of their most memorable victories was over Saladin's forces at the Battle of Montgisard. I'm sorry. Like I said, I butcher names all the time. Though the main mission of the Poor Knights was militaristic in nature, very few knights actually participated in combat. Though the Knights of the Order had taken a vow of individual poverty, if a nobleman wanted to take part in the current crusades, he would leave his assets under the management of the knights until his return in 1150 AD. The Order formed the first banking system by writing up letters of credit for anyone making pilgrimages to the Holy Land. You leave your valuables at a local preceptory. Yeah, thank you, Ruby. Before leaving, and they write you a letter stating the value of your deposit when you arrive. You give their local office your letter and receive treasure equal to the value of your deposit. There was threefold division of the ranks in the order, starting with the noble knight, followed by the noble non-noble sergeants, and lastly the chaplains. The order did not hold knighting ceremonies, so anyone wanting to join the Knights Templar had to be a knight already. Being as these were the most viable members of the order, they wore white mantles as symbols of their purity and chastity. They were often given 3 horses and between 1 to 2 squires. Hugh de Pan was the first Grand Master. This position was held for life, and being as they were a military order as well as a monastic order, this could be a very short term. A good example would be the siege of Ascalon in 1153 AD, where a Grand Master led 40 Templars through a breach in the wall, and when the Crusaders chose not to follow, the Templars were promptly surrounded and beheaded. The Templars were first organized as a monastic order similar to the Cistercian order. The organizational structure had a strong chain of authority, with there being a master of the order present in every country where a temple was present. The following countries each had a temple for more present had a temple or more, I'm sorry. Present-day France, Anjou-Poitou, Jerusalem, England, Aragon, which is present-day Spain, Portugal, Italy, Tripoli, Antioch, Hungary, and Croatia. In September 2001, the Chinon parchment, which was dated 17th through the 20th of August 1308, was discovered in the Vatican Secret Archives. I'm sorry, guys. Apparently, this document had been misfiled in 1628. This document was a record of the trial of the Templar Order and also shows that Pope Clement absolved the order of all heresies before formally disbanding the group, though not before many knights and grand masters were tortured and burned at the stake for devil worship. The tide was beginning to turn against the Crusades in the mid-12th century as the Muslim countries began to unite under more effective leaders such as Saladin. The Templars would sometimes find themselves at odds with 2 rival orders, the Knights Hospitaller and the Teutonic Knights. After decades of infighting between the 3 orders, Christian positions were greatly weakened, allowing Muslim forces to essentially reclaim Jerusalem several times. The Holy Roman Emperor Frederick II retook Jerusalem but only managed to hold it from 1229 AD until 1244 AD. Jerusalem was then retaken by the Ayyubid dynasty along with Khwarezmi mercenaries. Jerusalem did not return to Western control until 1917, at which time British forces reclaimed it from the Ottoman Empire. After losing Jerusalem, the Knights were forced to move their headquarters to the seaport of Acre. They held this city for nearly a century until it was taken in 1291 AD. During this time, they also lost their strongholds in Tortosa and Atlit. They then moved to the Isle of Cyprus. However, in 1303, they lost the island to the Egyptians, and they also lost their last foothold in the Holy Land. Now, King Philip IV, already deep in debt to the Templars, began pressuring the church to follow rumors cast by a former knight who had been cast from the order, in hopes that the order would be disbanded and he would be free of his debts. At dawn on Friday the 13th of October 1307, Pope Clement and King Philip ordered the arrest of de Molay and other French Templars, thus started the end of the order. All of the charges brought against the order, the biggest was accusations of heresy. It was alleged the new recruits were forced to engage in indecent kissing, spitting on crosses, and denying Christ. Being as this was a monastic order, this was considered several nails in their coffin. It was also alleged that they worshipped false idols, and members of the order engaged in homosexual practices. Elderly Grandmaster Jacques de Molay, who had confessed to the accusations under torture, along with Geoffrey, who had also confessed under torture, both recanted their confessions and proclaimed their innocence. Both men were declared guilty of relapsed heresy and burned at the stake in Paris on the 18th of March of 1314. De Molay asked to be tied in such a way that he was facing the Notre Dame Cathedral and that his hands be bound in prayer. And that is the end, guys. I want to thank you guys for listening. And like I said, I will be giving a letter to my professor to explain why I couldn't get the two to work together. And thank you guys for listening.